Music gives a soul to the mind, a flight to the imagination, wings to the wings. I'm sorry. Music gives a soul to the universe, a flight to the imagination, wings to the mind, and life to everything, said Plato. Indeed, music is the art of creating imagination and then express it in words, lyrics, to exercise one of the individual's or community's rights, freedom of speech. In fact, music censorship is prohibition of freedom. First of all, censorship is the control of what people may say or read, write or do. And it can affect books, newspapers, magazines, motion pictures, and so on. And it's ideas that a higher authority imposes on a majority of people to make them believe their point of view. First of all, no opinion, no expression, then no freedom of speech or a restricted one. Music is a way of expression. The singer or the writer expresses his or her opinion regarding moral, political, economical, or even religious issues. In one hand, to exercise one of his rights as individual, and in the other hand, to positively influence a small or a big community in order to spell things out. Things that has always been considered as a taboo or simply nobody could talk about in another form of communication or expression. According to that, music is expression. It is the right to hold your opinion, right and say it clearly. Yes?
So you said... So, you said that music influences people. So how are you talking about this influence when most of the songs right now, especially in the English language, that are blowing up, are all about drugs and sex and sexual positions and overdosing and stuff, gang killings? How is this going to impact someone in his life? Positively, as you said.
Dear Deputy Leader of the Opposition, I will answer you in my next argument. 2, censoring music is censoring ideas, and it's one of the highest forms of intolerance. Everybody is free to have an opinion. The artist's ideas make sense to him, and most of the time to his fans. If people don't like what they hear, they don't have to listen to. It is as simple as that. Moreover, censoring ideas expressed in a song is like not respecting someone, not being tolerant because the artist expresses himself differently and his ideas are different than ours. Restricting freedom of speech by suppressing parts of the song or totally prohibiting the song is necessarily an act of intolerance because it has no other reason than not being open to the possibility of being different and regarding creativity in writing and orally expressing it. Thank you.
Your freedom stops where mine begins. What better way to start today's debate than by this famous quote that summarizes it all? Ladies and gentlemen, it is a joy to stand here once again this year to enlighten your path and show you a reason. And since I learned a lot in this school to defend what's right and refute what's wrong, so here we go. Let's start by taking a closer look at the motion. Music censorship restricts freedom of speech. For those of you who might not know what does freedom of speech means, well, it is above all, yes, it is above all a human right. It is the right to express opinion, information or ideas of all kinds, except for those related to sexuality or whatever, or information trade, or whatever content that might be offending. However, the quote that I said earlier is another proof that freedom is limited. Freedom has boundaries. freedom is not free. I know it sounds all contradictory, but it's true. Let me remind you of the quote again. Your freedom stops where mine begins. Following this logic, the artist's freedom stops where the listener's freedom begins. So what defines limits is the content of the song, which takes us to the conclusion that the content of the song is the measure of how much respect the artist has for his audience. See, dear opponents, that freedom is all about respect. Freedom of speech without boundaries is nothing. Believe me, it's nothing than lack of respect. So that you can understand my point better, let me illustrate it in a sample, realistic example.
POI. So, you just said freedom isn't free, and you literally just compared freedom to boundaries that are two contradictory things. How do you explain that?
I said freedom has boundaries. Freedom is limited. It's not contradictory. I know. I said that freedom is limited. Freedom has boundaries. I also said that it has boundaries. It sounds all contradictory, but it's true. It's a fact. So that you can understand my point better, let me illustrate it in a sample, realistic example. Imagine being in the car with your dad. Then you got bored and you decide to turn on the radio. Surprise, surprise. The famous 170 kilos of Don Big is playing. Imagine your dad's reaction, or worse, imagine your younger brother with you in the car, likes the beat and start listening to all these bad words. And start singing along. Well, thank God it's not ever gonna happen as long as this song is censored. It's indeed right that freedom of speech is an important value. It is also crucial for any democracy. But placing limits is just as important in order for our society to avoid chaos. In talking about chaos, what's the easiest way to start a street fight? Well, the easiest way to start a street fight is to say something deeply offensive to the other. It might be a bad word. Believe me, it's so similar with music. The easiest way for a singer to start a street fight is to say something is to make a song in which he says something deeply offensive for a category of the society. Thank you.
If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they don't want to hear, said George Orwell. Ladies and gentlemen, opponents, honorable jury, greetings. I want to stand still, believe me, but I can't fight this adrenaline rush going through my veins to return to the main place that does not restrict my freedom of speech. I'm just an artist. My job is to defend my rights and those of my people through music. This isn't the first time I suffer from governmental abuse. I always have. Those, ladies and gentlemen, were the words of a Moroccan rapper by the name of the People, Long Live the People, the guy who started all this fuss in the first place. I think we can agree on who that is. And down there, he was treated like an animal. Because in this country, if you don't follow the sheep, ask too many questions, or even dare to say your opinion through music, that's probably going to be your fate as well. I could add 10 to 20 more artists that suffer from this same governmental abuse. And ladies and gentlemen, based on the definition given by the Prime Minister, we could all agree that censorship is a negative term. But our position is not against censorship itself. We just highly believe that it does restrain freedom of speech. I tend to cross the ocean even if that ocean is mine. Poverty is becoming one of people's rights here. Those were the words of a Moroccan rapper, Mr. C, that he rattled out of his heart and took him behind bars. But at least he can rest assured, poverty by 2020 will no longer exist, right? Unfortunately, these lies are forming clouds above each and every one of us and dripping acid rain on our skin, but unfortunately, it is immune. Needless to say that the artists, through the music of the artists that are given medals in our country, for travelers, Morocco may seem about haggling for carpets or romantic dreams over the Sahara or even
POI.
chasing... Yes, please.
You said that your freedom of speech as a musician is unlimited.
I didn't say that.
Sing a bad word right now and let's see what the reactions are.
First of all, I did not say freedom of speech isn't limited. I just said that we are for that censorship does restrain freedom of speech. That is the only thing I said. I did not say unlimited. Please listen to what I'm saying. And to continue, through the music of the artists that are given medals here, for travelers, Morocco can be gorgeous. But what is it like for Moroccans? Why is it that real music is shouted at concerts? You know why? Because over 1 million of our citizens are in malnutrition and hunger according to Index. So they tell you to eat grease and lubricant until you're filled with unanswered questions. Why did you give that much money to an empty building? Censored. Why can't we speak through music? Censored. Because some things, yeah, they're better left unsaid. Saying that censorship doesn't restrain freedom of speech is like saying that you can say whatever you want as long as it's not true. You can love whoever you want as long as it's the one we choose. And you can be whoever you want as long as it's under our reviews. Music censorship has turned us into a mass, not individuals, ladies and gentlemen. We're not even allowed to sing some lyrics, some true lyrics of people who suffered. People who went through pain and loss and turned it into music and lyrics that describe their lives, their opinions. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, censorship does restrain freedom of speech because freedom of speech is being able to speak about your experience. Good things, they flatter you, but bad things, they push you forward. They make you who you are. Thank you.
Well, before I start, I would like to start with our dear Prime Minister that said, if you don't want to listen to a song, simply don't listen to it. But how can we not when it's playing in the mall or in the radio? But we have something called censorship that prevents that from happening. See, dear opponents, after all, censorship is not that bad. And secondly, Deputy Prime Minister, I would like to re-say what my dear friend here said. You said that freedom of speech is unlimited. You didn't say that freedom of speech is unlimited, but you say, when I am in this podium, I can say whatever I want. Well, go ahead. Next time, you can say a bad word. You are my guest. I want to win this debate. Ladies and gentlemen, before I start, I would like to point out that I'm a huge hip-hop/rap fan, and I've been listening to this genre through its ups and downs and everything. But I don't really like the turn it has been taken lately. The greedy labels, the greedy producers, the greedy singers, the flexing, and the meaningless lyrics. I mean, it does really affect who we really are in our daily basis. I mean, let me tell you something. Who here has heard the YJ song, Stop Snitching? Ladies and gentlemen, that has 170 square words in under 156 seconds, the equivalent of 0.88 seconds for every cuss word. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not acceptable. I mean, I'm just saying. Have you checked the latest Rolling Loud concert? Don't you see how this music is affecting people? Ladies and gentlemen, you can literally just hear them talking and listen to them saying, you know what I'm feeling, or the S word or the BS word every single second. Because for quote unquote, that's how they express their pain in themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, how is that even acceptable? The language that I fell for, that I wanted to learn ever since I was young, this language I love. Ladies and gentlemen, this issue is really serious. To get along with this debate, I want to address this to Mr. Haruri, who, unfortunately, in the beginning of the year, I said BS. Who, unfortunately, in the beginning of this year, I said BS in the middle of his class, which he was lean with, and I thank him for that. I do indeed thank him. But how could I prevent that? How could I prevent that when I was listening to such offensive songs, such as Juice WRLD Bandit, and the lyrics goes like this: I just want bad B words, baddest B words of them baddest, and when I am on that, I feel savage. Just in these 3 lines, just in these 4 lines or 3, we can see how he's talking already about women and prostitution and about pretty much drugs and everything. No wonder he died of an overdose. I want to go back to another song that's called X B-Word by XXXTentacion, which was the first song of his album. And to prove to you, dear opponents, that I am not selectively picking my songs, here's how the lyrics goes. I just F-word my act. I can't say this sentence because they are so offensive. They are so sexual, talking about sexual positions, something that's not accepted in today's generation. And this is not what hip-hop and rap was about back then. Hip-hop and rap was so different. I'm gonna give you some artists, Trippie Redd, NF, or just latest Kanye West album. Even Kanye West made the change of himself. Ladies and gentlemen, hip-hop and rap has changed. And these kids, these teenagers, and these adults are listening to this music that is deeply offensive, that is learned in them bad manners. Ladies and gentlemen, we should censor this music because it appears to be the only solution left that we have. We don't want our kids growing to be there and even going as prostitutes or doing drugs. And I don't know, because this is such a huge subject and there's so much to it, so much negativity and barely any positivity. Ladies and gentlemen, music should be censored. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we have gotten deeper into this topic, things started heating up. My fellow friends did a great job leading you into the right path, while others on the opposite side tried to keep you out of it. But don't worry, dear opponents, dear audience, I'm here and I'm glad to tell you that I'm standing right here, right now, to walk you through the right path. This path, the government's path. Censorship restricts freedom of speech. I'll tell you what I have to say about that. As the Prime Minister said, music today is an important part of our lives. It is a way to express ourselves as individuals. And it is a form of art that helps us define what we are and who we are. It helps us to express our feelings, views, thoughts, and ideas. But have you ever noticed while scrolling down on Apple Music why there is a little parental advisory sticker on the bottom right of some albums? Why radios have to bleep everything, or why some CDs can't be sold in stores? If you answered yes to any of all these questions, then stick around with me, because for the next 4 minutes, I'm going to explain to you why censorship on our music is way too harsh, but most of all, kills freedom of speech. Today, many artists are faced with censorship. It is one of the most controversial things they have to deal with. Eminem feels that it's important to hold on to something that is dear to you, which is the feeling he experienced when he raps. In his song Stimulate, he talks about how his songs are constantly attacked by censors and people who dislike his music. My lyrical content is constantly under fire. No wonder why I constantly bomb back. When lyrics are constantly taken out of context, failure to communicate with Congress has been a problem for the longest, I guess. Eminem is still in the listeners that his lyrics constantly attacked by censors because of the things he says in his music and how everything is taken out of context. This only causes him to create more songs based on the reaction he's getting. What people need to understand is that some topics that the artist thinks about... Yes, please.
You said that every album or every song that contains any type of profanity has a little parental advisory explicit content sign. That sign is for people who are not immature, who are not old enough to listen to these songs. So as long as you pass the age restriction, you can listen to it. So as long as no one stops the artist from recording the song, I don't see any harm done.
Okay, so we use the parental advisory to give a precaution that this particular album or content has some offensive language, sexual references. If you're underage or if you don't want to listen to this, you can go listen to Baby Shark or ABC Song or whatever you like. Okay. Censorship purpose is to limit or restrict certain parts of a certain subject. Sometimes changing and censoring lyrics to music can completely change or even ruin the meaning of the song. In addition, censoring music can be compared to dictatorial regimes, with the intention of censoring things that people might see or hear, and quite frankly, it is a violation of our Constitution. Now, instead of leaving you like this, I'm gonna leave you all with a quote from Andrew Hall. Music is recognized as a source of power. Those who choose to stop it by censorship have a fear of what they... Thank you.
Dear opponents, you have a misconception, a wrong perception, but I'm here to correct it. Don't worry, I'll slow the cadence to go with your slow understanding, and that is an understatement. Now look out, a physics lesson is coming at you at supersonic speed. Let's start. To understand the concept of freedom, let's concretize it and say that freedom is a matter, a rock for example, and it is circulating around the person. And then there is the other, whose freedom is also circulating around him. Now, at a certain point, the two matters, the two rocks, are going to meet. However, because they're rocks and so on have neutral charges, and so there is no attraction, no repulsion, they will simply collide. And at the point of what I call the collision, will form a wall, a boundary, a limit. Now, all of this was to show that freedom is naturally restricted by the simple existence of the other. So on, when expressing your ideas and your feelings and your ideas and your opinions, you have to think about how can it be offensive towards the other. Same with music. As it is art, it's a form of expression that influences, and that is where it becomes dangerous. Dangerous how, you may ask? Well, simply, music's influence is really deep. And the only I can think of different way to explain this, no, not in our physics lesson, but I'm just going to recall you of the rock and roll era. Now, rock and roll is a kind of music that appeared in the last century, and along it came the rock and roll lifestyle that consisted of alcohol, drugs, sex. And soon enough, this became a life dream for some and a living reality for others.
POI.
Yes, go ahead.
These artists that you're talking about in hip-hop and rock and roll and stuff, they came home with a father who is in prison, or maybe they don't even know who he is, and a mother who doesn't come in until 3 a.m. not knowing what she's doing. And he lived in the streets and grew up and made of himself the person he is today. What do you expect him to sing about? Rainbows, butterflies? Just what exactly? Thank you.
I see that you have a wrong idea of what we are saying. We're not saying that you cannot express your feelings, your opinions, your ideas without using bad words. You can totally do that. You don't have to take a position. You don't have to be a racist and talk about racism in your music. If you're racist, well then, that's really wrong, and so on. You cannot produce a song about racism and publish it and make and influence other people to become racist as you are. You can talk about really bad situations in your life without touching the other's freedom. Now that is the point. I was saying that music's influence is not always bad. And seeing its range, its large range, it is only right that the government intervenes and censors all of the content that touches the other's freedom. Now let's all practice our empathy skills and imagine. Imagine that you are a person of color, speaking of racism, that you are a person of color. You're out in the streets, walking around, laid back, taking it all in. And then there's this little blonde Jean-Pierre going around singing, "What's up, my N-word? Get up, my N-word, N-word, N-word." Yes, Chris Brown's most famous song, Freaky Friday. Can you imagine how offensive this is? Can you imagine? Now, isn't this a loss of freedom to live, freedom to be respected, freedom to be yourself. Now for this kind of situations, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, to make one thing clear, haven't you noticed, in case you did not, actually, Chris Brown is actually light-skinned. So, music censorship is ridiculous. Let's not forget that forbidden fruit tastes so much sweeter. When someone discourages you from doing something, you often feel that your freedom is being threatened, which motivates you to regain choice and control by doing exactly the opposite. If a piece of art has disturbing themes, moves, sounds, etc., that are not appropriate for children, then it is up to legal guardians and the adults in contact with the kids to inform them about it and give them the choice. And that's the case for censorship and kids as well as teenagers for the most part. Songs with erotic noises are an art in themselves. Expressing pleasure of sex and drugs through words and instrument sounds and how it affects the artist negatively or positively is no different from expressing the same thing on a canvas, paint, and a brush. We do not censor nudity or sexual activity expressed in paintings. We even often see in public spaces nude sculptures of famous Greek gods or just people, or in other cases, like the Kama Sutra sculptures that show different positions of sex. You see, that's our problem. We mistake art for entertainment. If you want entertainment, then you go for what suits you most. Let's say, for example, horror movies trigger you. You simply just don't watch horror movies. Same goes for a painting. If you don't like it, you just don't look at it. Same goes for music. If you don't like a song, you simply switch it off or change the channel of the radio. The choice should be given to people. We shouldn't ban everyone from it simply because it does not resonate with a group of humans. Yes?
So you said you can simply switch the song off the radio or something like that. The damage has already been done the moment you hear that word or you hear the artist being completely offensive. Something else I wanted to point out is by the member of the government, and I would like you to defend it. You said that you don't expect them to rap about rainbows and unicorns. That's not what I want. I don't expect someone like Lil Mosey or Lil Pump that studied in Harvard and then dropped out at 16 and to start rapping about his girls and drugs, etc. This is not acceptable.
I already mentioned, if you don't appreciate a piece of art, you simply just don't listen to it. Exactly. In conclusion, censoring art is restricting freedom of... What am I saying? Sorry. In conclusion, censoring art is restricting freedom of expression. In other words, censoring music is restricting freedom of speech. Musicians face constant resistance from the authorities for speaking up about the conditions them and their people are living in, for criticizing politics or certain rights that are set against humans, or for speaking about taboo topics, and we claim that we have complete democracy. Please, what democracy? We live in a world where the power... Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to answer the Deputy Prime Minister, who said that he doesn't live in a world full of rainbows and butterflies to sing about it. Well, we get it, his life was harsh, but for him to influence a little kid who actually lives in a world full of rainbows and butterflies to live in his same world is very illogical. So if you're sad, you make the other person sad. If I go to hell, I will drag you with me. It doesn't make sense. And for the government whip who said that Chris Brown is light-skinned, so it's okay for him to say the N-word. It's as if I'm telling you, I'm a girl, so I think about offensive stuff about women and sexist stuff, so it's okay for me. That also doesn't make sense. Well, I'll move on. We hear these bad words everywhere. They seem unavoidable. The internet has made profanity appear everywhere and to appear uncensored. It all starts when you hear a song that contains profanity, as in bad words. You start repeating the lyrics in your head, then you start humming it. You start saying them out loud occasionally, then you start repeating them on a regular basis. Some use them to show off their anger or emotions. Some use them to just be like to show as if they're cool, and some use them to joke around. But none of us really know what this culture of cursing and swearing that we learn throughout music is actually doing to our society. Yes.
First of all, when you talked about rainbows and butterflies, according to kids, that's the exact and main reason why she talked about parental advisor, but I guess you were too busy laughing to hear that. Second of all, you talked about racism, sexism, and sex and drugs. Sometimes some singers talk about some topics that concern the country and things that they suffered from politics or a bad experience, and not just bad words, and just literal words that he feels and turns them into songs. Why would the government or whatever you're defending try to censor that? Thank you.
Because we lost. It's a beautiful way to end the war and to embrace peace. So let me tell you that restricting freedom of speech is pointless because art is an outlet of self-expression. Thank you.
Look at you, standing here in front of me, with your head high, with such confidence. Try it. With such confidence, with your head high, trying to convince me that music censorship is bad. Trying to convince the parents that are with us here that music that trying to convince the parents that are with us here that it's okay, it's totally okay to let their kids listen to songs where they literally identify women bodies as objects. Talking about how cool it is to deal with drugs, how cool it is to have sex, talking about things. How could you try to convince me something that impossible? Like, I don't know. Another thing I want to talk about is that you can control what your kids, as a parent, you can control what your kids are listening to. You can, because and when you get to that point, you can control what your kids are thinking, their way of thinking and their education.
I'm gonna spare me some time, spare you the thought that's gonna go in vain. First of all, you've been talking about the same thing for the whole debate. that are kids, when we here have talked about countries and other emotions that you haven't even spoken about, you've told us that we said freedom is limited when not at all. And the second thing I want to talk about is that you're saying that we said censorship is bad, when I clearly defined that we're not against censorship. We're for the motion that says censorship of music restrains freedom of speech. And freedom of speech is being able to say whatever you want, however you want, the way that you experienced it. And the thing I want to say again is that you should be able to speak through art. And art is debate, and it's writing, and as of our motion, it is music.
You said that we've only been talking about kids and stuff like that. I give you example of a couple songs about gangs, etc., that also proved especially what the United States has been going through, this gang motion. All right, so I'm going to give you all a quick example. X, Mac Miller, Juice WRLD, and a couple of other artists. What do these all have in common? They're rappers. All three of them died. You see, I love their music, as most of you dear opponents know. But the thing here is, ladies and gentlemen, their music affected them to killing themselves. XXXTentacion was talking about his gang, and the rival gang came up to him and killed him. Juice WRLD was talking about his drugs all the time. He overdosed on a plane, came back with a brain tumor at the airport. And Lil Peep and Mac Miller, both of them overdosed at their crib. See, not only does it affect their kids, it also affects the artists, and it can affect any of you guys here. It can affect your future. It can maybe cause you death. Ladies and gentlemen, censorship, I think, is the best way to avoid any of this. Thank you.
Dear opponents, please, every POI, every argument we say, you don't respond us, please. Second thing, all you did was talk about kids. World is not full of kids. First of all, second thing, I already mentioned in my previous intervention that there is a parental advisory sticker to stop these kids from listening to this content. What do we need to do more than this to let you know and to let these kids know that this content contains sexual references, violence? That's the maximum that we can do. Third thing I want to address is that these rappers that say bad words and whatever violence they say, they address to a certain public, not kids. Thank you.
Now, first of all, kids are the future generation. That's why we are focusing on kids. Kids are the most influenced category of the society. So yes, it is only logical that we talk about them and that we put our focus on them. Second of all, parental advisory. What a joke, really. You're saying now that a little tiny sign at the edge of the album is going to stop you as a kid. It's going to stop you. You're saying now that as a kid, you see that sign, you'll be like, oh no, that's not for me. Okay, that's a huge joke, because that's not how it goes. Really, as kids, that sign just triggers our curiosity even more and pushes us to watch that content even more. Plus, if the album has really a parental advisory restriction, well then on the radio, on the TV, on the public spaces, we are not to expect that song.
First of all, you made a point. You said that, you said that the kids are the future generations, which means that the other categories of the society aren't really that important for you to consider. So, and you're calling us the racists and sexists. So can you please clarify that and please answer our questions, because you only keep on repeating the same arguments over and over again. I wanted to say something. Kids. When you said you were going out shopping and you listen to something that offends you, then it is up to like the actual owner to choose the kind of songs that are entertaining for you as a buyer to like listen to while shopping.
Yes, because that's what will attract me and it will benefit him too, as the seller. Well, I would like to answer you. I never called you sexist or racist. I'm calling that these songs share these discriminations. And also, we didn't keep on repeating the same thing. We spoke about kids, because yes, kids are the important part of the world because they will grow up and they will become the leaders. I don't care how many times we will say it, but it is the truth and you should face it. Another thing is that I would like to answer the Prime Minister who talked about the Eminem song. And, well, guess why it's censored? Because his fans, many of them are very young, as in under the age of 18, and well, they're not mature enough to understand it, so they will go actually and try to kill Bush. That is my answer. And yeah, that's it.